The October wind whistled through the Tesla factory's parking lot as Elon Musk stepped out of his morning meeting. The clock had just struck 7 a.m., and already the facility was humming with activity. He paused, watching employees stream through the entrance, each face telling its own story. "Morning, Mr. Musk," a young security guard called out as he swiped his badge. "Tommy," his name tag read. "How's the new baby sleeping?" Elon asked, remembering their brief chat from last week. Tommy's tired smile said it all. 3 hours at a time, sir, but worth every minute. These morning interactions had become increasingly important to Elon. After years of being painted as the calculating tech billionaire, he had made a conscious effort to know his people better, not for PR. The press wasn't around for these dawn conversations. He had been deeply reflective lately, driven by a nagging sense that something was missing from his understanding of Tesla's workforce. Back inside his office, his assistant Sarah was already waiting with his schedule. "The board wants to discuss the new production targets," she began, but Elon held up his hand. "Before that, show me the employee satisfaction reports from last month." Sarah blinked. "The summary or the raw data?" "Raw data. All of it." She pulled up the files on his massive screen, the rows and columns stretching endlessly. "Any particular reason?" Elon leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the numbers. "Something feels off. Can't put my finger on it." The morning melted into afternoon as meetings blurred together. Production quotas, supply chain optimization, investor calls, the usual symphony of running a revolutionary company. But between each session, Elon found himself watching his employees through the glass walls of his office. "Sir," his head of HR, James Patterson, caught his attention during a lunch break. "Is everything all right? You seem distracted." Elon gestured to the bustling cafeteria below. "How well do we really know them, James? Our employees. We run regular surveys, conduct performance reviews." "No, Elon," James cut in. "I mean really know them, what their lives are like when they clock out." James adjusted his tie uncomfortably. "With respect, sir, that's not typically within our purview." "Maybe it should be," Elon said softly. He turned from the window. "Implement a new communication system. I want to monitor employee forums, messages, internal communications." James frowned. "Sir, that could be seen as invasive." "Not to spy," Elon clarified. "To understand. Set up alerts for keywords related to well-being, hardship, anything that might indicate someone needs help. And I want direct access to the feed. That's unusual for a CEO of your level." "When have I ever cared about being usual?" Elon said with a small smile. The system went live that afternoon. As Elon sat through the board meeting, his phone quietly collected data, learning patterns, analyzing conversations. Most messages were mundane: complaints about the coffee machine, discussions about project deadlines, jokes about his latest tweets. The evening came, and the factory's rhythm changed. The day shift headed home while the night crew took their places. Elon stayed, something keeping him in his office even as his calendar cleared at 9:47 p.m. His phone buzzed. Initially, he ignored it, focused on reviewing designs for the latest Model S upgrade. But it buzzed again and again. "For heaven's sake," he muttered, finally picking it up. The new monitoring system had flagged something, multiple alerts, all centered on a single message in the employee forum. "Does anyone have any leftover food from the cafe? I can work an extra hour in exchange." The timestamp showed it had been posted just moments ago by an employee named Maria Torres. Something about the message made him pause, the desperation carefully hidden behind professional language. The offer to trade time for food. Computer. Pull up employee file. Maria Torres. His screen filled with information. Engineering department. Level 3 clearance. Hired 18 months ago. Perfect attendance record. Multiple commendations from supervisors. Then he saw her time logs. "This can't be right," he muttered, scrolling through the data. "Sarah," he called out, knowing his assistant was still at her desk. She appeared in the doorway. "Yes, sir." "These time logs from Maria Torres, are they accurate?" Sarah checked her tablet. "Yes. Sir, she's been working double shifts for, looks like, just over 3 months now. Double shifts? Every day? According to the logs? Yes. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. with minimal breaks. Elon leaned back, his mind racing. Pull up her project assignments. More screens of data appeared. Maria's work was exceptional, innovative solutions to complex engineering problems, consistently ahead of schedule despite the intensity. Her pay rate, standard for her level. Sir, actually, Sarah added, she was due for a raise review last month, but didn't attend the meeting. Her supervisor noted she asked to postpone it. Elon frowned. An engineer working 16-hour days, producing exceptional work, asking for food in exchange for even more hours, and she passed up a chance for a raise. Show me the security feeds for her workstation. The cameras revealed a young woman hunched over her computer, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even through the grainy footage, her exhaustion was evident. Sarah, he said, hesitating, should I forward this to HR? No, he said finally. This one's different. This one I need to understand myself. He pulled up the employee forum again. No one had responded to Maria's message yet. The night shift crew was smaller. Most of the cafeteria staff long gone. His cursor blinked in the reply box. He could respond himself, order food delivered to her desk. But something told him this wasn't about a single meal. Sarah, he asked, what's her current location? A few keystrokes brought up a map of the building. Section E, Workstation 247. She'd been there since her second shift started at 7 p.m. Cancel my morning meetings tomorrow. All of them. But the investors. All of them. He headed for the door. Sarah, pull up everything you can find about Maria Torres. Not just her employee file. Social media. Public records. Everything. Of course. Sir, she responded. But what exactly are we looking for? Elon watched the security feed one more time. Maria had just picked up her empty coffee cup, staring into it sadly before setting it back down. The truth, he said simply. We're looking for the truth. The night stretched on as Elon Musk sat in his office, the dim glow from his computer screen casting a flickering light across the walls. The Tesla factory hummed in the background, a steady rhythm of mechanical sounds punctuated by the occasional distant conversation or clatter of tools. Outside, the city of Fremont slept, unaware of the man watching his screens, piecing together the story of Maria Torres. Elon's mind refused to rest. Each detail, each piece of data, demanded his attention. His phone buzzed again, a new alert from the monitoring system. He glanced at the message, checking in again. No responses. No one's helped her. The words lingered in his mind like a haunting melody. How could it be that no one else had noticed? How had it come to this? A highly skilled engineer, lauded for her innovative contributions, reduced to such desperation. Maria's file had been thoroughly reviewed. The commendations from supervisors, her flawless performance evaluations, and her eagerness to push boundaries in her work had stood out. Yet, none of it could mask the reality Elon had uncovered, her relentless, double-shift schedule, with minimal breaks, leaving her drained both physically and mentally. And then there was the mysterious trail of payments to an experimental medical facility, a detail that gnawed him with increasing urgency. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became. Maria was a reflection of something larger, a systemic failure hiding beneath the glossy facade of innovation. Elon's head of HR, James Patterson, had entered his office quietly, sensing the weight of the situation. Sir, it's almost midnight. Should we continue this investigation? No, Elon said softly, his voice barely a whisper. Not tonight. James paused, uncertain. Are you sure? Yes. Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as if lost in thought. Tonight, we wait. The next morning, the Tesla factory opened its doors with an air of normalcy. Yet beneath the surface, the undercurrent of yesterday's revelations remained palpable. Elon's decision to suspend all meetings except for those with investors had spread through the company like ripples in a pond, sparking curiosity and speculation among employees. His behavior was unusual, uncharacteristic even, but few dared question it directly. Elon entered the cafeteria, his presence commanding attention even as he tried to blend in with the sea of workers. Conversations paused as heads turned toward him. He exchanged brief nods with some, a word here and there with others. But his mind was elsewhere. He was looking for more than just surface-level interactions. He was searching for the unseen. Sarah approached him with the latest updates on Maria Torres. Her face somber. "Sir, we've compiled a report on her family's situation, her mother's health, her financial struggles, the impact on her well-being. It's troubling." Elon took the report without speaking, his eyes scanning the contents meticulously. The additional context was a sobering confirmation of what he had begun to piece together. The threads of Maria's life were unraveling under the weight of unseen challenges. Her dedication to Tesla, her relentless pursuit of excellence, was masking a much deeper personal crisis. "She shouldn't be doing this," Elon murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The board meeting that followed was tense, with investors and senior executives discussing the latest production targets and future innovations. Yet, Elon's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the image of Maria's exhausted face, her desperate plea for help masked by professional decorum. His questions persisted, questions no one else seemed to ask. How well did they truly understand their employees? How did they navigate the blurry line between corporate success and human compassion? During a break in the meeting, James leaned over to speak quietly. "Sir, are you sure this level of intervention is appropriate?" Elon met his gaze with intensity. "I'm not looking for appropriateness, James. I'm looking for solutions." The days that followed were a delicate dance between Elon's need for answers and the complexity of navigating a corporate structure resistant to wholesale change. He maintained his discreet surveillance of Maria, ensuring her double shifts were acknowledged and recorded. He watched as she arrived early, worked through grueling hours, and then returned home late into the night, her figure becoming a shadow of exhaustion against the harsh fluorescent lights. At the same time, conversations with James and other department heads became more frequent, delving into how the company could better support its employees beyond surface-level metrics. The idea of a more personalized approach to well-being took shape, a system where individual needs could be understood, not just data points collected for quarterly reviews. "I want every supervisor," Elon instructed, "to understand the full context of their team members, to know what challenges they face, not just the ones they share in performance reviews, but the ones they carry home." James nodded, though he was skeptical of the practicality of such a directive. It's a step into the unknown, but if it works, it could redefine how we see our workforce. Meanwhile, Maria's world remained a quiet struggle. Her small apartment was a refuge from the relentless demands of the factory, but even there, the lines between work and life blurred. Her mother, Elena, spent her days resting as much as her deteriorating health allowed. But Maria's nights were spent working tirelessly, her mind consumed with calculations and deadlines. Elon knew this, too. He saw the way Maria's body sagged with fatigue, how she fought to remain present despite her exhaustion. Her resilience was not a symbol of strength, but of necessity, a necessity born from a system that demanded more than it gave in return. Late one evening, after another exhausting shift, Maria returned home to her apartment, barely managing to unlock the door before collapsing onto her bed. The quietness of the room was a stark contrast to the noise of the factory. For a moment, her thoughts drifted, reminiscing over memories of simpler times, of her mother's laughter, of the hope that once fueled her dreams of becoming a renowned engineer. But those days felt like distant echoes, drowned by the weight of her current reality. The following morning, Elon stood outside her apartment once again. This time, he didn't knock. He simply waited, watching as Maria prepared for her day. The quiet observation felt less intrusive and more necessary, an acknowledgement of the silent battles she fought. When she finally noticed him through the window, there was no initial shock, only a moment of recognition. Maria paused, her breath catching in her throat, before approaching the door once more. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "What brings you here?" Elon gave a small smile, the kind of smile reserved for rare moments of genuine connection. "I wanted to check in, no work agenda. Just you." The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken understanding. Maria's vulnerability wasn't something easily met with words, but for the first time in weeks, it felt as though someone truly saw her, not just her achievements, but her struggles too. As they stood there, the world outside seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next step in this unfolding story. And for Elon Musk, that step was clear. Change wasn't something to be planned in meetings or outlined in reports. It had to be personal. It had to be real. And it had to start with understanding the truth. The late afternoon sun filtered through the apartment's thin curtains, casting warm patterns across the modest living room. Elon Musk sat quietly in one of the mismatched chairs, observing Maria Torres as she moved through her small, cluttered space. Her demeanor was composed. Yet there was an underlying tension that couldn't be masked, an unspoken weariness etched into her features. She handed Elon a glass of water, the simple gesture speaking volumes about her hospitality despite everything she was going through. "I never imagined this would happen," Maria said softly, setting the glass down beside him. "Having the CEO of Tesla in my living room, it feels surreal." Elon smiled faintly, nodding. "It's not every day someone's life brings me here." Maria sat down across from him, folding her hands in her lap as if to ground herself. "Why did you come?" she asked, her voice steady but curious. "To understand," Elon replied, his gaze steady. "Not just the numbers, the reports, the work you've done, but you. I've been thinking a lot about how we, as a company, fail to see the whole picture. How many others are there like you, working themselves into the ground for a system that doesn't recognize their humanity?" Maria's eyes searched his, searching for a sincerity she hadn't fully believed was possible. She didn't have an immediate answer. How could she, when the weight of her own reality felt suffocating? She'd grown used to fighting alone, carrying her burdens without complaint because that's what was expected of her. A silent warrior in the engine room of progress. "You don't have to carry this alone," Elon continued. "You shouldn't have to." The room fell into silence again. Outside, the hum of traffic echoed through the streets below, a distant reminder of the world beyond the four walls. Maria leaned back in her chair, her mind racing through the multitude of decisions that had led her here. Choices made not out of resignation, but out of necessity. "I've never asked for help before," she finally said, "and I don't even know if I can. Not really. It feels like, if I stop, everything will fall apart." "That's the illusion," Elon said quietly, "that we have to keep pushing, keep striving, no matter the cost. It's a system designed to make us believe there's no other way. But there is another way, and it starts with understanding." Maria looked down at her hands, her thoughts clouding her face. "But what about the others? The ones who are just like me, who don't have someone looking out for them? Will anything really change for them?" Elon reached across the small table, resting his hand lightly on hers. "It has to. It will." Their exchange was interrupted by the quiet buzz of Maria's phone. She glanced at the screen, a mix of emotions flickering across her face as she read the message. Her thumb hovered over the reply box before she typed quickly, sending a brief message back into the void. "Thank you," she said simply, setting the phone down again. "What was that about?" Elon asked, curious. "My coworker," Maria explained. "She's been working even longer shifts than I have. She asked for food last night, and no one responded. I told her I'd keep an eye on her. But seeing you here makes it clear that she needs more than just me. She needs the system to change." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what we're going to work on, together." They spent the evening discussing ideas, plans, and strategies. Elon outlined a vision for a more holistic approach to employee support, one that would shift beyond performance metrics and salary adjustments to encompass real, tangible change. He proposed creating a new program dedicated to employee well-being, providing resources for mental health, financial support, and better work-life balance. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be resistance, but it was necessary. Maria's exhaustion ebbed away slowly, replaced by a flicker of hope. For the first time in months, perhaps even years, she felt seen, not as just another worker in a machine, but as a person with value and worth beyond her productivity. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, proposals, and adjustments. Elon Musk's involvement in Maria's situation became more visible to the Tesla leadership, and discussions about employee well-being moved from the margins of conversation to the forefront of strategic planning. James Patterson and other department heads began to incorporate a more empathetic approach, ensuring that supervisors and managers considered the holistic well-being of their teams, not just their professional output. Maria, however, was only beginning to understand the ripple effect her story had created. New systems were implemented, ones that tracked not just the hours worked, but the conditions those hours were achieved under. Emotional well-being became as important as technical performance, and there was an increased focus on ensuring that support systems were accessible to everyone. Still, not every problem was solved overnight. Some employees were reluctant to share their struggles, fear lingering beneath the surface of vulnerability. The stigma of weakness, of burdening a system built on efficiency, ran deep, but the small victories became footholds, and slowly, the culture began to shift. One evening, Maria was walking through the Tesla campus for a meeting with her new supervisor, a position created as part of the new support initiative. The campus was buzzing with activity, yet there was a different energy in the air. People smiled more, spoke more openly, and seemed more connected. She passed by familiar faces, those who had seen her struggle and had now witnessed her transformation. As she approached the building where her meeting was scheduled, someone called her name. She turned to see a familiar figure, Tommy, the young security guard who had asked how her baby was sleeping during those early mornings. His smile was warm, genuine, and for a moment, Maria felt a sense of peace. "Hey, Maria," he said, "how's everything going?" She paused, thinking carefully before responding. "It's getting better." Tommy nodded, understanding the unspoken words behind her statement. "That's good to hear. You deserve that." Maria smiled back, a hint of relief in her eyes. The weight of her journey wasn't gone, but it no longer felt overwhelming. She had people now, people who saw her, heard her, and were working to build a better system, one where humanity mattered just as much as innovation. As she entered the building, she carried with her not just the burden of her past, but the hope for a future where workers like her would no longer need to fight alone.